tonight, our focus is on what's known as the abomination that causes desolation, which Daniel writes about extensively, but then Jesus has something to say about what Daniel tells us. So the connection between Daniel's prophecy and what Jesus tells us about it will be the focus tonight. But before I start the reading, because there's quite a bit to read, I want to think about this idea and the way we usually think about it. Because we usually think about, when we think about the abomination that causes desolation, I think the most common interpretation of that is the Antichrist sets himself up in the temple, essentially declares himself to be God, and as such causes an abomination of the temple itself. So there's a couple of things to think about as we read this. First of all, at this point in history, at least in a literal sense, there is no temple. Jerusalem exists, the church exists, Israel exists, but there is certainly no temple in the tradition of what Solomon built or in the tradition of what was built after the Babylonian exile. So, while we certainly can expect the Antichrist to create an abomination of something or a denigration of something, it's not completely clear what that something is. So we need to keep that in mind as we read, because part of what we have to try to discern as believers in today's age is what might this be a sign of, okay? So I'm going to start in Daniel 9. And I'm going to read verses 24 through 27. Also keep this in mind. When Daniel talks about a week usually means 7 years. Okay? A week means 7 days to us. But when Daniel talks about it, he's talking about 7 years. Okay? Okay. Daniel 9 and 24 through 27. 70 weeks are decreed about your people in your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. What do we mean by a most holy place? Let's just keep that question in our heads. Know, therefore, and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and a moat, but in a troubled time. Okay, so if a week is 7 years, then 7 weeks is 49 years, and 62 weeks, I don't even know if I can do the math on that. It's 400-something years. And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people of the prince who is come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood, and then there shall be war. Desolations are decreed, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. At this point, the prince we're talking about is not our prince. It's not the Prince of Peace, it's the prince of this world and the man who's doing his bidding. And for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. Okay, now let me point out a couple of things, because I'm going to want a second to read quite a lot from Daniel 11. He's saying for half a week, I want to quote it directly. For half a week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. So again, if a week is 7 years, half a week is 3.5 years. That would track very nicely with the idea of a 7-year tribulation period, in which the first half of it, he makes certain deals, certain guarantees, certain agreements. But the other thing he does is he puts an end to what's described as sacrifice and offering. Now, this is another one of these things where we have to pay attention to try to get specific about the type of thing he's talking about. Because in other times there are references to burnt offerings of the type that were used in the temple during the days of Israel. I don't know that that's necessarily literally what we're talking about here. You have to remember, Daniel is very symbolic apocalyptic literature. Not quite as much as Revelation, but a lot of Daniel is. So what I think we can say for sure is that he will put an end to some practice that is important to God's people. Okay? So keep that in mind. Now, I have a rather long passage from Daniel 11. The passage from Daniel 11 is going to be verses 20 through 39. But it's all important for context. Then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. We get caught up in language. Does anybody know what an exactor of tribute is? Okay, so tribute can mean a number of things. It can mean I pay tribute. I think you're awesome. I'm paying tribute to you. But in this case, we are almost certainly talking about a monetary tribute. Okay, a tribute can be a tax. It can be a fee that's owed. It can be an honorarium. But it's almost certainly money or some sort of gift. So the exactor is one who comes and exacts the tribute. So if I'm the exactor of the tribute, it's my job to come to you and make sure you give the tribute. Okay? So there shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of the tribute for the glory of the kingdom. So the exactor of the tribute actually sounds like a good guy. He sounds like one of us. But within a few days, he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. In his place shall arise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. He shall come in and without warning obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Okay, so the first guy, the exactor of the tribute, that's actually, sounds like he's a friend of ours. He was coming to get something that was going to be for the kingdom. But he's pushed aside, he's broken, he's knocked out, and he's replaced by this contemptible person who's coming in and obtaining the kingdom by flatteries. All right, so in other words, this guy is obtaining power by flattering people and getting them and getting their goodwill. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from the time that an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. Without warning, he shall come into the richest parts of the province, and he shall do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done, scattering among them plunder, spoil, and goods. He shall devise plans against strongholds, but only for a time. And he shall stir up power in his heart and against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall wage war with an exceedingly great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for plots shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. So this is all the king of the south, okay? This is not the detestable guy who set himself up as power. This is the king of the south who tried to come against him, but did not do so successfully. And as for the two kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but to no avail. For the end is yet to be at the time appointed. And he shall return to his land with great wealth, but his heart shall be set against the holy covenant. And he shall work his will and return to his own land. If I could just stop here real quick and just ask you to think about something. There's this reference to two kings telling lies at the same table. Can anyone picture this as two prominent world leaders at some sort of negotiating table or some sort of summit, or some sort of talks where they're supposed to be working on some agreement and all they're doing is just lying to each other? I mean, how many times do we see that in modern times? These days, we don't really have kings per se, but we have world leaders. And world leaders sit at tables with each other and they lie to each other. So this sounds like something that we see all the time. All right, picking it up with verse 29. At the time appointed, he shall return and come into the south. We're still talking about the king of the south. But it shall not be this time as it was before. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him, and he shall be afraid and withdraw, and shall turn back and be enraged, and take action against the holy covenant. He shall turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the holy covenant. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering. So now he's in cahoots with the big guy, the big bad guy. And they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. He shall seduce with flattery those who violate the covenant, but the people who know their God shall stand firm and take action. And the wise among the people shall make many understand. Though for some days they shall stumble by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder. When they stumble, they shall receive a little help. And many shall join them to themselves with flattery. And some of the wise shall stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, and made white until the time of the end, for it still awaits the appointed time. So what we've just seen is, at this point, the Antichrist is really going heavy on the flattery, and he's favoring those who are also in opposition to God and to God's promises, okay? He's consolidating his power by being sure to flatter those whose support he needs. And inevitably, these are people who have no use for Jesus, no use for God. All right. And the king shall do as he wills. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished, for what is decreed shall be done. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one beloved by women. He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. On Sunday mornings, we've just had this series about the three divine rebellions, and we talked about the gods over the other nations, the pagan gods that were worshipped by the Gentile nations. This guy, he doesn't worship them. He's got no use for them. He wants to set himself up as God, okay? He shall honor the God of fortresses instead of these. A God whom his fathers did not know, he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. Those who acknowledge him he shall load with honor. He shall make them rulers over many and shall divide the land for a price. So now he is getting the help of a foreign god, but it's not the God of his fathers and it's not the God the other nations knew. Who could this be? Let's remember, we talked in a previous week about, so our Trinity is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They also have a Trinity. The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And we had gone through some other scriptures where we identified the beast as the man who is the Antichrist, and the false prophet as one who props him up. But the dragon, does anybody remember who the dragon is? The dragon is Satan. So, who's the foreign god that's helping the Antichrist? The Antichrist being the one who sets himself up as the abomination that causes desolation. The foreign god that's helping the Antichrist is none other than Satan himself. Okay? Now, before we get to what Jesus has to say about Daniel, I have a little bit more of Daniel. If you look at Daniel 12, I'm going to read verses 1 through 15. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, not the first time we've heard that, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. What does it sound like we're describing here? Does anybody remember who Michael is? Michael is one of God's angels. He's one of God's loyal angels. Michael fights on behalf of God and on behalf of God's people. Michael's good. Michael's a good guy. He's one of our guys. So, when we hear in Daniel 12 that Michael arises and there's a time of trouble, but people shall be delivered. People whose name is found written in the book shall be restored. People who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the sky above. Okay, there's some beautiful imagery from Philippians 2. This sounds to me like the events have turned. And this sounds to me like, if not the actual coming of Jesus, the very last preparations of it. But remember, all of these tribulation events have to happen before that. Then those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Then God turns things in a very interesting way on Daniel. He says, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, he gets a little meta here. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood, one on this bank of the stream and one on the other bank of the stream. And someone said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream? How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever and ever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. That sounds to me like 3 years. A time, times, and half a time. And that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished. I heard, but I did not understand. You got to love Daniel's honesty here, don't you? I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, "O my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things?" He said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the things are shut up and sealed, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act violently, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Now this is a twist. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of the days." Okay, so thank you for indulging me all the Daniel reading. I know that was a lot. So we just got a twist at the end. This is going to take, from the time the abomination that sets up the desolation, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,334 days. Okay, I'm confused. Are we talking about 1,290 days, or are we talking about 1,334 days? It's a difference of 45 days. Where do they come from? First of all, let's establish about how long is 1,290 days. It's about 3.5 years. kind of like a time times and half a time, is also 3.5 years. What is 1,335 days? Well, it's a little bit more than 3.5 years, but it's in the ballpark. So what's going on during these 45 days? I don't stand up here claiming to know. I did have an interesting thing that I heard said about prophecy recently, and it's maybe wise for us to keep in mind. Much of the point of prophecy is only to be fully understood after the fact. So there will come a time when these periods of days have been fulfilled. And those of us that are there can look back and say, oh, so that's what the 1,290 days were, and that's what the 1,335 days were, and now I understand what the extra 45 days were. But we're not necessarily supposed to know that definitively now. It's something we're supposed to watch for. But I do think we can draw this conclusion, and then I need to get to what Jesus has to say about all this because it's the most important thing we have tonight. The tribulation period is almost certainly a period of right around 7 years. And when I say the tribulation period, I'm talking about the period of time in which the Antichrist has risen to power, in which he's done all the things we've talked about, like force people to take the mark, not let you buy and sell if you don't have the mark, taking away the burnt offerings or whatever that represents or symbolizes, and creates this desolation in what you might call the temple. But what I think we can say is that something that is very sacred and valuable and important and respected by those who love Jesus is trampled all over by this guy who's setting himself up to be God. And all this happens during the 7-year period. But it also appears to be true that for the first half of the 7 years, he appears to be making certain agreements and certain accommodations. So, okay, he's not our guy, but he's making some deals with us. He's allowing us some things. He's making some treaties. He might even make a treaty with Israel. And we would say, okay, he's not as bad as he could be. But it will become pretty clear at a certain point that he's not to be trusted and he's not going to keep these agreements. And based on some of these delineations, I would say it happens right around the halfway point of the 7-year period. Now, let's get to the words of Jesus in Matthew 24. Jesus can analyze this a lot better than I can. Jesus says in Matthew 24, picking it up in verse 15, so when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel. Okay, so Jesus is now going back to everything we just read that Daniel said. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such that has not been from the beginning of the world until now and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Interesting to speculate what he means by the days will be cut short. Does he mean we're going to have 12-hour days instead of 24-hour days because we can't handle the days, they're too long? Does he mean the number of days will be cut short? Is that the reign of... If those days had not been cut short, anyone says to you, look, here's the Christ, to lead astray you, look, he's in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Whenever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. And I'm just going to continue through to verse 31 because Jesus gets really explicit about what to expect of his coming. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. If what he just described was going on, you'd notice it, right? You'd definitely notice it. There will be the clouds of heaven with power and to the other. So that I have come out in the woods, one will miss it. When the stars will be shaken, the trumpet blast will be so loud it will be heard from all over the world. There will be no one who sleeps through it. There will be no one who doesn't hear it because they have their Beats headphones on. Okay? You'll know when I come. So if somebody tells you, I already showed up and you missed it, don't believe them. You'll know when I come. The other thing that's critical here is he makes it very clear, and I know I've made this point in some other evenings when we've talked about this. This must happen after the tribulation. Jesus makes that very, very clear. It happens after the tribulation. And it's a good thing that it does, because when the tribulation has gone on for 7 years, or precisely how long exactly it's going to be, there will be no one but Jesus who can shake this guy from his foundations on earth. Jesus has to do it. It's also critical to understand something. Now, this is maybe the most troubling thing he tells us. He tells us in verse 24. Because Jesus tells us in verse 24, false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. In other words, the power of the Antichrist will be so strong and so compelling that even a lot of the people you have known your whole lives as Christians are going to be fooled by this guy. The deceptions are going to be that powerful. False signs to fool even the elect, if that were possible. And yes, it's possible. And you know how I know it's possible? Because I look around now and I see people who have identified their whole lives as evangelical Christians who are following horrible, ungodly people because they perceive them to be allies, or because they're against the same people they're against, or something like that. For the longest time, I used to think that the Antichrist would be a man very strongly identified with the secular world and a champion of the secular world, someone that the Christian community would inherently know not to trust. I'm not so sure about that anymore. I think, based on some of what I'm seeing in the world and some of the way it's helping me to understand the scriptures, the Antichrist might be someone we think initially is our friend. We think initially is our ally. Because one of the things that this tells us is, for the first half of the tribulation period, he will make certain agreements, he will make certain guarantees. Like, for example, maybe he would make a guarantee to the Christian community that our right to worship would be protected legally. That's kind of something we're looking for, right? Because it's threatened in a lot of places. It's not as threatened here in America, at least not yet. Do you know that there are preachers in Canada who have been arrested and charged with a crime for preaching that homosexuality is unbiblical? That has happened in Canada, okay? It's happened in other parts of the world too. It isn't happening here quite so much yet, but the freedom to practice our faith is definitely something that Christians have been very sensitive to lately. So if somebody comes along and says, I'm going to protect that, we're probably going to kind of like that guy, right? We might even like him enough to overlook some really obvious problems. I don't think the Antichrist is necessarily going to be an obvious enemy at all. He might be somebody that for a period of time we think it's in our best interests to accommodate. And what can happen is people start to become loyal to individuals because they feel that they've done something positive for them, and the next thing you know, they're more loyal to that individual than they are to Jesus. That type of deception is going to rope in and trap a lot of people. A lot of people. So Jesus warns us about that. Oh, okay. I finally got it scrolling again. One other thing. I'm kind of going now from like bottom to top with the things that Jesus says. He talks about if you're on the housetop, don't go down to get your stuff. Okay? If you're out in the field, don't go back to get your coat. Just go. Just go. This is sometimes interpreted as a reference to what's known as the rapture. Okay? Two people are on a rooftop, one is taken, the other. Okay, you're on the rooftop, don't go down, don't get your stuff, just kind of wait and Jesus is going to take you to heaven. I don't think that's what it means. And let me tell you why I don't think that's what it means. Verse 16, he says, "Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who's on the housetop not go down to take one to his house." Why is he telling those who are in Judea to flee to the mountains? Because this is where the most intense trouble is going to be. This is where the enemies are going to set up their operations of power. It is from here that they're going to do the evil they do, that they're going to commit the oppression that they commit. It is not the place where you want to be if you're a believer. Jesus says, look, I'm warning you, this is going to get really bad. Get out. Pray that it doesn't happen in the winter because you have nowhere to go but the mountains. I know this sounds like, why would Jesus tell us to do something that's so desolate and hopeless? Why would he tell us to do this? Because this is going to be a serious time. This is going to be a time of great turmoil and great trouble and great danger. And it wouldn't be the first time that God's people had to go to the wilderness. But when we do, he's with us. So, the abomination that causes desolation, what is that? We just read an awful lot, and a lot of it was in apocalyptic language, and I know that. But what we can say for sure, and really Jesus tells us this, he says, the abomination of desolation is spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place. Standing in the holy place. What is the holy place? Well, as I said earlier, as of this moment, there is no temple per se. Some people think, well, this must mean there's going to be a third temple built at some point, and then that will be the place where he goes and he abominates it. I don't know that that's really necessary. The holy place could simply be the holy city. The holy place could be a holy mountain. The holy place could simply represent the church itself. And the Antichrist's attempt to deceive and weave himself into our lives and even into our ministry. What we can say for sure is that there's something we consider to be the providence of God that this guy's going to try and take for himself. And clearly that's an abomination. What is desolation? What is it like when something's desolate? When you think of something that's desolate, what does that mean? Yeah, it's empty, it's kind of hopeless, it's kind of depressing. You don't want to be in a desolate, I guess if you really want to be alone, okay, you go to a desolate place, right? But a desolate place is not a place that's teeming with life. It's not a place where very much positive is going on or very much at all going on. So if the abomination causes desolation, what we can expect that to mean is that his impact on the holy place, whether that's a building, a city, a mountain, the church itself, our hearts, what it means is that he will turn something that should be teeming with life and powered by love and turn it into something desolate and depressing and hopeless. And this is why Jesus says, you don't want to be there when that happens. And when he says those who are in Judea, he gives us a pretty good indication of some sort of geographic place that's tied to it, okay? This is likely to happen in or around Judea. And if God's people are there, Jesus says, get out now. Get out now. Probably wait for my instructions, but you don't want to be in Judea. So that's the abomination that causes desolation. It is, after all this, I'll just wrap it up by saying this. It is the act of the man of sin, of the man of Satan, the man who serves the dragon. It is the act of that man to set himself up in the place that only is the providence of God. Abominate it, corrupt it, and take something that should be teeming with life and power and love and turn it desolate. And this will be one of the most definitive acts of this period of time when this man has power on earth. So, people of the Lord, have your eyes open. And I urge you again, as I wrap up, think critically about everything you see going on around you. Just because the world is accepting something as mainstreamed and normal doesn't mean we should. Test everything against the Word of God. And I don't care who's out there that appeals to you for one reason or another. If that person is not in the loyal service of Jesus Christ, do not give your devotion to that person. And don't give it to anybody but Jesus anyway. But especially not to somebody like that. I don't care what he promises you.